Hello and welcome to Write On, the podcast from Final Draft. This is the show where we talk about all things screenwriting. I'm your host, Phil Galasso. On today's episode, we have an interview with screenwriting career coach Carol Kirschner. Guest host and Big Break contest director Kayla Guess chatted with Carol about the 5 principles of successful networking, the importance of making meaningful connections, how not to network, and more. Check it out.
Hi, Carol. Welcome back to the show. I think you live here now, right?
I love it. So thanks for having me back. It's always great.
You're welcome. I hope the turn down service was to your liking.
Well, I particularly like the little mint on the pillow.
Yeah. And we're cool like Netflix. You know, we have the already toothpasted toothbrush in the heated bathroom. Sorry. Anyway, welcome back.
Thank you.
We don't actually put our guests up, people. We're just kidding. We don't have that kind of money. So today, we talked about all different aspects of the industry, the different tools you need, so to speak, in your toolbox as a writer and really any kind of filmmaker in the industry. Aside from your specific craft trade, in this instance, we're talking about screenwriting. We've been talking about the importance of all the other aspects of dealing with pitching and general meetings and all of the ins and outs. And there's several episodes that we've done already that our listeners, if you haven't listened, you can go back and listen to those. I will link it in this episode. Today, we're going to focus on networking. Networking is, I think, right up there with a lot of people's least favorite word in terms of as far as writers go, right?
Right.
Yeah. And, I think what I found or what we found over at Final Draft is if we call them mixers instead of networking, the turnout seems to be better.
Sure.
Whatever you need to call it. So talk to us a little bit about networking. What does that mean for someone who's never heard the term before and just listening today?
Sure. Well, I think when people hear the term networking, it strikes fear and loathing in the heart of many people, including a lot of writers. But there's some lucky few who really look forward to it. They get energized by it because they're extroverts and they're so happy to be interacting with people. But I think for the rest of us, it feels like a daunting task. When I think of networking, and when the people I work with think of networking, the image, that often comes to mind is this smarmy, agent person who's backing you into a corner and talking at you and trying to get something from you.
Yes.
Or worse, I think, is when you feel the pressure that you should be trying to get something and then you feel sort of yucky and desperate. And it doesn't have to be that way. And the thing is, in Hollywood, this, Kayla, everybody wants to know what you do. Yeah. It's like you cannot go to an event without somebody saying, so what do you do?
Yeah.
And the truth is they're asking that, but what they're really saying is, what can you do for me? Which is what we're going to talk about in a little bit.
Yeah. And that maybe that's not what the intended message, how it was intended to be received, but it certainly is how it's received. So, and I feel like the history of networking events, just over the last 5 years, there's been an evolvement of some sort. It feels like the events that I've been to most recently before this pandesh situation happened, pandeshuation, whatever we're in. I totally just made that up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you did.
Pandeshuation? I don't know. Let's hashtag it. Anyway, we were it was all very serious. Name tags and color coding, what your role, what your level was, and really trying to identify who you were, what you did so that you could I think the purpose was to eliminate that part of the conversation so people could just start talking to people, but it didn't do that. It just kind of, I think, turned people off.
Sure.
And now, there's no name tags. There's no real, certainly at our mixers, there's no set programming. You just show up, grab a drink and go find your people. I've definitely seen that evolvement for sure. So it seems like it's a little less buttoned up. What do you think?
I think it depends. That's why you guys are so great at doing those kind of mixers. I think it depends on what mixer you're at.
Okay.
What event you're at. Some of them, and it's interesting, they say in name tags and titles, that is a very corporate approach to it. And I love that you don't do that. And I think a lot of, if you do a networking event because maybe you're in one of the programs, I think you still have name tags. But, and the thing is for what we just talked about, that those bad feelings, because I love lists, and I do, I came up with 5 principles for successful networking. And I actually do a whole class on networking 101. And what the principles are, and this helps with everything, I think, at least for me and the people I work with, this helps with all aspects of the dicey part of networking. And 1 is the right attitude. And 2 is putting your best foot forward with your personal presentation. And 3 is practicing stress-free engagement. Ooh. And 4 is being prepared. And 5 is following up and using a spreadsheet or a database.
And are these in order of importance? Like, has the order changed for you over time as you've seen what works, what doesn't work with your clients? Like, how did you come to what was important number 1 versus number 5?
For me, whenever I come up with lists, again, which I love, it's really what occurs to me first. I would say that there's sort of equal weight. And the first one is first. That is actually the most important, is the first one.
The first one is, again?
The first one is having the right attitude.
Oh, well, let's just go ahead and talk about attitude.
Let's dive into that.
Yeah. What do you mean by that? I mean, it seems obvious, be in a good mood and be nice, but I'm sure you dig deeper than that.
Yeah. For me, the right attitude sort of starts with what you call it. And I hate the word networking. It conjures up the things we just talked about, that picture. But the word I much more prefer is connecting.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't even call it networking for the most part. I call it connecting. And so the first part of the first principle is calling it connetworking. Calling it connecting. That was a new word.
We're making up a whole new language for everyone.
We are. It's about, and you sort of touched on this when you said find your people. It's about making a genuine connection.
Okay.
And when you do make a genuine connection, and when you go to an event, a mixer, whatever, and if your goal is to just meet people that you have a real connection with, that begins to take the pressure off of it. And the second part of it truly shifts your emotional sort of paradigm about it. And it is shifting from what can I get to what can I give? Absolutely. And that is super important, because then you're not feeling desperate. You're really thinking in every encounter, what can I do to help this person? And, some people say, well, I don't have anything to help people with. And here's the kind of things that I'm talking about. You can always offer to read somebody's script and give them feedback. You can tell them about a writer's group. You can tell them about the Final Draft Big Break contest. You can tell them about upcoming events. And I hear a lot of people say, but you know what? I don't have anything to offer somebody who's really, quote, important or higher up on the food chain. And this is what I really think. If somebody's really well established, then just giving them a really thoughtful and sincere compliment on their work it's a gift to any artist. So if you can't do anything else and you're talking to somebody that you feel you don't have anything concrete to offer, that kind of thing is really helpful to remember. Everybody wants to hear something, but it's got to be genuine and it's got to be thoughtful. It can't just be, I loved your last movie, and your last script was great. Something like, when I saw your last film, it touched me because. So it's really detailed and thoughtful. And what I always say, and I do this exercise with my clients, is to really take the pressure off, go to an event with the goal of just genuinely connecting with 2 people. And once you hit 2 people, go home because you've been a success. That really helps. And also to set up a schedule for yourself, because I'm sure you've said this before, this business is based on relationships. People, and it's risk averse. They want to hire people they know or hire people who've been referred to them by someone they know. So your job, in addition to being a kick-ass writer, has to be to build your community of mutually beneficial relationships. That is how things happen. That is the way that successful people succeed. I encourage people to set up, especially if they're feeling reticent about it, set up a schedule for yourself. Say, I'm going to go to one event a week. And then after you do that for a while and you feel comfortable, then do 2 a week or just 4 a month, whatever feels right, but do it.
Absolutely. And I am here. This is Auntie Kayla speaking now. My single mothering ass. Why did I even spell it out? People know we cuss here. We just had a conversation about this. Yeah. Anyway, I was at 2 to 3 events a week. I mean, mind you, it was my job, but if I could do it after a full day of work and with a kiddo by myself, there is no reason why writers can't make 1 or 2 events a month at the bare minimum.
Bare minimum. I would challenge people to do 1 a week. Yeah. I really would.
There's so much going on.
There's so much going on. And again, if you're just there to meet somebody that you really connect to, that you have common ground with, think of it as more like you're going to meet a friend. You're looking for a friend. That should take the pressure off. And you don't have to meet everybody in the room. And here's another thing. And you know this, Kayla, there probably is not one person in that room that is going to make or break your career. So you should be meeting with all different kinds of people and not just be making a beeline for that person who is, the queen or king of that event.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's meeting people at your peer level too.
Yeah. Because again, this industry is all about relationships and it's about trust and, like you said, risk averse. So it's not a meritocracy, people.
No, this is about the business in terms of succeeding is a lot about preparation and opportunity. You have to be ready. And one way in terms of the opportunity part of it is to know a lot of people, because the more people you know, the more opportunities you're going to find out about.
And you have a term for this that I love that anybody who knows me is probably sick of hearing me say, because I've adopted it ever since the last time we spoke, which was that it's really important to have a diverse and meaningful network. And I think you basically just explained what all of that is. But I think that what you call a diverse and meaningful network is a good way to remember, like something to maybe say to yourself, like, I'm here to make this, who don't I have in my network right now in terms of filmmakers, looking at that before you go, like being more strategic that way. And I like that you say too, and on a high note, I got my 2 people and I'm going to leave now. I don't have to meet anybody else. That was my goal. Check. Goodbye.
That's right. It just takes the pressure off. And in terms of having a diverse network, that's really, and we were talking about this earlier, that's about knowing more people than writers. Yeah. Because you just never know. You may be meeting assistants and those assistants move up the ladder. And you may meet a producer and you never know what will come back, what will circle back, and the people that will have an impact on your life. So it's not just about meeting an agent or a manager. In fact, I would take that off my connecting goal. If you meet one, great. And again, it should be, is this somebody you have a genuine connection with, or can you find some common ground?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. People can remember too, like these people that you meet, someone that might be repped and they might read your writing, if you guys have a genuine connection, and recommend your script to their manager or their agent. I mean, there's no one way to get your stuff through. So just being mindful of that. So attitude, your attitude.
Number two is putting your best foot forward with your personal presentation.
So you should brush our teeth and put on deodorant, or what do you mean by that?
Yes, that's the bare minimum.
That's the bare minimum.
The thing is that connecting is a lot like dating. I think everybody knows that.
Yeah.
Malcolm Gladwell, in his book Blink, says we make almost instantaneous assumptions about the people that we meet. Some people think, well, that's within the first 5 minutes. The truth is within the first 2 seconds.
Yeah.
That's all it takes for somebody to have an impression of you. So in that 2 seconds, okay, I'll give you 5 seconds. You want to convey quiet confidence, friendliness, upbeat, positive energy. And it's kind of like, think about the people that you're drawn to. And unless you're a reclusive hermit, and I know some people listening are, but for the rest of us, we're drawn towards people who are upbeat, who are friendly. They're people that we want to get to know. Let's start with confidence. How do you convey confidence? And I think it's through body language, eye contact, and a positive attitude.
Now, I do want to ask this question. Now,
Yes,
what about our writers that are neurodivergent and making eye contact is a huge anxiety trigger for them?
Of course, that's a really good point. And as we talk about body language, not everybody, one of the first things is sort of to stand up straight. And if your mother said stand up straight, she was right. And that's not everyone can do that. And not everyone can make eye contact.
Yeah.
So this is a general kind of approach to it. You have to customize it for you. The point of the eye contact is to be present in the moment. Okay. So however you need to do that is fine.
So your body language says, however your body language is for you, says, I am here present and actively listening.
Yes, I'm actively listening. I am open. Mm-hmm. Like some people cross their arms and some people sit defensively, like people can't see us, but crossing your arms over your chest, that means I'm not accessible. I'm not available. So I just suggest that people think in their mind accessible and confident.
Okay.
As we said, also, if you're in a meeting, let's say, and you're sitting, you want to sort of open your arms if that's something that you can do. So it looks like you're accessible on Zoom. That's
not what I'm doing right now. So you guys can't see me, but I'm like totally leaning on one side arm of my chair and my arms are definitely crossed and I'm sitting like an absolute teenager right now.
But Kayla, we know each other, right?
Yeah, right?
So I know how confident you are. I'm not looking at your body language for the first time thinking, oh, she's not even trying here.
Yeah. So if I were, so the proper, I'm actively listening and I'm here and give a shit about what you have to say is like, I'm sitting up straight. I'm attentive. I'm at least facing your direction. My body is like open, arms are not crossed or whatever limitations you have, like to, do that for yourself to just make it very clear. The social cue is like, yes, come talk to me.
Exactly. And the thing about friendliness is you want to be genuinely interested in getting to know someone. You want to be curious about them. That's what makes people outgoing and friendly. Mm-hmm. And the positive attitude is really important because there are people who are very bitter because for whatever reason, they haven't had happen to them yet what they hope to happen to them. Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to be around that energy. No. You want people who are enthusiastic about where they are in their career without being assholes, but also where you are, who it's upbeat, it's friendly.
I'm going to put an exclamation point on that point and say also online. Definitely. If you're saying congratulations to someone, don't cap it off with, if only I had made it to. Like, stop whining.
No one wants to hear it. That's a really good point.
So tired of it. As a contest director, I guess I spend more time paying attention to the conversations about contests online, but good Lord, there are a lot of wet blankets out there.
There are.
Well, I guess not. It's so much Eeyore out there on Twitter.
As a total aside, this has absolutely nothing to do with this. Sorry. I was 43 when my daughter was born. I didn't know about kids at all. And somebody gave her, when she was born, a gift of an Eeyore, stuffed animal, and the tail comes off because that's Eeyore. And I had to say, what's an Eeyore? Because I had no idea that was just somebody grumpy and whiny kind of person. Not that this has anything to do with our conversation.
No, it does. Well, but it does though, because networking is very much about your demeanor and how you are, how you convey, how you come across and how you receive. And if your energy is like toxic and like, listen, writers already know how fucking hard it is to break in as a writer. We don't need you. These events are online. Like, just throwing that salt in the wound every time. Just come in positive and ready to win.
That's right. And here's the thing. People are not drawn to whiners. It's not fun to be around that. So what I say is save that for your therapist, save that for your coach, save that for your very best friends, but don't put it out there.
The very least.
And
next.
Talk to Kayla about it. She wants to hear you.
I have feelings about it. Yeah, I can go right into my DMs that are never open.
Yeah. So if you don't hear from Kayla, that's why, because she's not opening them. Now, what we just said about friendly and confident and all that, you can do all that and still be your authentic self. In fact, being your authentic self is super important.
Yeah.
But you just want to be the best version of yourself.
Yeah.
And if you're not trying to get something from someone, you can actually relax and be in the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we all have something to offer each other too. Like you could be talking to an editor and, I'm sure you guys know that. Trust me, I've been to hundreds of networking events and there's always something to talk about with everyone.
Yes. Well, that brings us right to number 3, which is engage, practicing stress-free engagement. You couldn't have set me up and teed me up for that any better.
I might know you a little bit, but no, I didn't actually intend on doing that. But what I was going to get into was I'm so excited to talk about that because I cannot tell you, I have no idea how many events I canceled as a younger professional because the social anxiety of it got to me. There was too much pressure and it was not anxiety free. So let's definitely dig into that.
Great. Changing your mindset from what can I give to what can I get to what can I give. That'll help with the anxiety, knowing you only have to meet 2 people and maybe it's just one at any given event can help take the pressure off. And focusing on what you can do for them also takes the pressure off. You want to engage, as we just said, on an authentic level. You don't want to be fake or phony. If you really want to engage stress-free, go up to somebody who's not talking to anybody and say, hi, how are you doing? You might run into a whiner or you just might run into somebody who's so grateful that somebody's talking to them.
Yeah.
What I say, you're just there to find out about them. I say it's in any interchange, it's 30% about you and 70% about them. You want to find out who they are, what they do. This will help you know how you can help them. And
I think too, like the pressure too and the anxiety, some of it is also a lot of imposter syndrome, right? Like, what if these people think I don't belong here? Like, do I belong here? Like, what if someone talks to me and asks me what I write? I don't know what the fuck I'm talking, So I wonder if that's part of it too, right?
I think it can be. And I think absolutely one way to overcome that is talk about them. Draw them out, be interested in them. And the funny thing, and you probably know this, Kayla, is if you're really interested in somebody, after the event, they go, that person was so interesting. So if you're interested in them, they're going to be interested in you and think you're interesting, which is really good. And, in a very practical sense, what you want to do to start a conversation, because some people need these specifics. And
they do.
I've learned this. And you know what? I used to not like connecting. And now I mostly really do. I look forward to it. And I'm not necessarily an extrovert. I'm really sort of an introvert extrovert, but who cares? That's me. We're talking about you.
Oh, I think a lot of people listening would love to know more about what goes on in the brain of Carol Kirchner. But let's go on.
Talk to my therapist. She'll send you an email. Anyway, actually, I'm not in therapy anymore. I already did 100 years of therapy. No longer need it. That doesn't mean that you may not. So.
Oh, I'm in all. We're on the text. It's that real. So
yeah. Anyway, so the way to do it to make it stress-free is start with something general, a general question like, what do you think this event is like? And what do you think of the speaker? What do you think of the panel? What do you think of the buffet? Or this is always a good one, and I have used it, and it really helps break the ice. Are you as uncomfortable at these other things as I am? Almost everybody will be. Yeah. And it's a great conversation starter.
Yeah, the commiserating. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, great. Another mixer.
Yeah.
Another Tuesday night.
Yes. How often are you doing that in the Zoom land?
You know, we haven't, as a brand, we haven't really done that. Like the most we've done to be live with our audience, and we're still definitely working on other ways to be, interactive with our community until we can do things in person more safely. We're doing like some online interactive stuff. Like we did a logline competition with some of the different, our favorite buzzword gatekeepers in the industry.
Yeah.
Reworked some log lines live, and then the audience voted on which one was the best to like demonstrate that there's so many different opinions and different ways to look at things, and also just to have fun and engage with our audience.
Absolutely. But IRL is what we're all looking for, right?
Absolutely.
And a lot of this is more for in real life than it is Zoom.
Yeah.
And I have some thoughts about Zoom that we can talk about later. But so number 4 is really being properly prepared. And that means, and you touched on this, knowing ahead of time what you want to say, what you want to get across. And nothing helps nerves as much as being prepared. So I have a checklist, which if people email me at carol@carolkirschner.com, I'll send to you. Okay. And you can use this as a checklist before you have a connecting event. And again, because I like lists, there's 4 things on the checklist.
Okay.
The first one is knowing your personal log line. And I think we've talked about this in the past. It's 30 seconds it's a conversational 30 seconds where it's your monologue about you. Okay. And it will, if somebody says, what do you do? This is the answer to it.
Who are you? Yeah.
And so you want to know that ahead of time and sort of practice it ahead of time so it's top of mind. 2 is 1 or 2 general personal nuggets, a story about yourself or something that happened recently that you can bring up. And then 3 is think ahead of time, 1 or 2 things that you can offer somebody. If you're thinking about that ahead of time, then when you get there, you will be prepared to think about that. And each person you talk to, you can think, is this one of the things I came up with? And the 4th thing is think ahead of time, if you're nervous, about general conversation starters. It's what we just talked about, those general questions. Have that ahead of time. It is going to make you feel more prepared. Don't make it like, oh my God, I have to get all of this done. And it's just a checklist to think of ahead of time.
Yeah. And you do feel more prepared when you walk in. If you want to add other things to your checklist, like a stick of gum and some business cards or whatever the things are that, make you feel like you're not like naked in public, so to speak, your creature comforts, I guess, for people that have higher anxiety and issues with the socializing aspect of it, having those things with you sometimes helps. And I want to go back to the end of step 3 where you were talking about sharing something about yourself, because can you get more specific about what you let's just be real. What are the parameters? Because some people will overshare and exhaust every possibility they had in their career.
Right. First of all, it should only be 30%. Do not talk nonstop. This is a conversation. This is not about you going down your list of everything you want to say about yourself. And here's the truth. This is like meeting people, anybody who might be a friend. You don't want to get so personal the first time you meet somebody. Like, I was in a mental institution. I don't think that needs to be said. If you have been in a mental institution, that's something you want to share with somebody, do it after you get to know them.
Yeah.
If you have had trauma in your life, and so many people have, if you cannot talk about that trauma without getting super emotional, don't bring it up. Until you have a really deep relationship with somebody. It should never be so deeply personal. I know people, I bet you do, Kayla, who just don't have filters. Do you know what I mean? And I'm going to tell you, her hand is going up. You have a filter. Here's the thing, you want to be able to toss it off.
I have several versions of different filters depending on, yes, I do.
You might want to say, I was a single mom. We were talking about this. I started being a single mom at 25. Now, you have enough distance from that so that you say it, you toss it off. If you say, I had a nervous breakdown when I was a single mother, and I was absolutely incapable of doing anything for 6 months, no one wants to hear that in the first time.
Because now they're doing emotional labor with some stranger and like
exactly
with Kleenex or a hug. It's very uncomfortable.
You don't want anybody to, and this is true in a meeting, anything else, you don't want anybody to feel bad about you, because that stops the flow. Or to feel sad about something that happened to you. You need to be able to say it in a way that isn't sad. Or don't say it in the beginning.
Yeah. If you can't, like you said, just throw it as an aside. If it triggers tears or anxiety at all, you probably shouldn't talk about it with strangers in a public setting.
Exactly. I think that's a good rule.
I bring that up because I just feel like mental health in writing specifically isn't talked about enough, like the trauma and the triggers and stuff, because, as a writer, you obviously have to like dip into those boxes that you hopefully have mastered compartmentalizing and closing when you don't need to use them. I think about like the writer's room, you're in there all day, like revisiting your trauma, and then you're just going home like, okay, now it's time to be mom.
Yeah.
If you are someone who has that kind of, trauma that you plan on using in your writing, like I would say, learn how to separate it from your networking.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. It can be a burden for the person who's listening, and in a very strategic way. If you are looking to make a friendship, you again don't want them to feel sorry for you.
Yeah.
As a first interaction. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't share who you really are down the road,
right,
when they know you better and you know them and you feel like they're a safe person.
Yeah. Because you've like automatically put each person on different planes,
Yeah.
It's alienating in a way, which is the opposite of what you want to be doing when you're at a mixer or a network. So things like what not to do would be, oversharing.
Absolutely. Oversharing. Well, can I talk about 5 before we get to what not to do? Do we have time for that?
There was 5. We didn't get to 5. We were still on 4. Oh, wow.
We were still on 4.
I'm sorry. See, I could talk to you for hours. Poor Emma. Emma, our producer on the back end, has to listen to us go on and on because Carol and I can talk for hours. We're sorry, Emma. Go ahead with number 5.
Okay, number 5, super important. Number 1 is super important, changing your attitude. Number 5 is super important, which is about following up. Here's the thing. If you're meeting somebody at a mixer and you find a genuine connection, get their contact information. Share, exchange contact information, and then wait 2 or 3 days and sort of reach out. And if you said to that person as you were talking, as one of the ways to help them, oh, I read an article about X, send them the article, do the thing that you said you would do. Oh, I want to introduce you to somebody. Do that in that first interchange post the event. And if you like them, think about the next time you might get together for coffee or a movie or something like that. But this is like dating. Don't be desperate. It's like, I really enjoyed meeting you. If you have the time, you want to grab a coffee. That's it. And if they don't respond, then don't keep trying, because it means that it wasn't genuinely a connection. What I say is it's absolutely critically important as you're starting your career. But I know senior level writers and showrunners and producers who use this tool, which is a networking database. It's everybody you've met. It's their contact information. It's how you met them, when you met them, what they have read of yours, something that you discussed in your connection with them in your meeting, or this is good for executives or producers, but also people you met at a networking event. Just a nugget about who they are so you can remember the next time you send an email or you meet with them again, like they have a 25-year-old daughter, or they just took up archery, or they are really interested in sci-fi. Now, if you are not using one, I so encourage you to do. And if you email me, I might have talked about this before, I will send you one of the best templates I've ever seen about it. Yes. So just that is a tool for your career. This is as important as writing a great script, if you ask me.
Yeah, I agree. Because you're not I mean, like, I feel like any in-person event that you go through, you go to, you're not going to remember every single detail that everyone told you.
No.
You take an extemporaneous report, basically, and you write down things like the dog's name, the kid's name, little details like that, shows that you give a shit.
That is so true.
We're talking about genuine connections. And when you say, I want to go back a little bit to the point about where you said, if they don't answer, like, don't keep harassing them, don't go back. There is definitely a group of people that will argue with you and say, oh no, absolutely not. I'm a squeaky wheel. I'm going to follow up. I'm going to follow up. And to those people, that's where I think the miss is. That's not a genuine connection. That's not right. What we're not talking about chasing a deal or trying to close, get a signature on a contract. We're talking about a friendship.
That is absolutely true. And if somebody came charging after you, you wouldn't want to be friends with them because they would feel desperate. Here's a caveat maybe, which is reach out in a couple of days. If they don't respond, but you hear about something about them, they got signed or they won an award or something like that, you can always send an email or text or a DM or whatever and just say, congratulations, we met at X, and I've sort of been following what's going, you don't want to say that sounds like a stalker. I just heard that you got X, and I just want to say congratulations and best to you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's completely professional. It just shows that you're keeping up with their career. You're invested in them and how well they, how they succeed. And if that doesn't come off creepy at all. And yeah, again, like you can't force a friendship with people. Like some people are just oil and water. So being a squeaky wheel does not apply in this particular instance of following up.
Exactly. And here's the other thing. And I did a whole blog post about this. Don't ask somebody to read your script in the first interchange with them. That is such bad form and etiquette. That's a big no. Don't do that. Even though you're dying to do that, don't do that. You said, what are the some things not to do? Don't ask people to read your script the first time you meet them.
Ever.
If they say, I'd love to read something, you can send it to them, but don't say, oh, would you read my script? Just don't do that. And here's some others. Number one, after don't ask them to read your script is don't be a dick.
Yeah.
Don't be selfish. Don't do a monologue at people. Don't talk at them. Don't be snarky. Don't be superficial. You don't want to do a deep dive, but don't be a jerk. You know what I mean? Don't criticize other people. A really number one thing of what not to do is don't not go to events. Don't not get out there. Yeah, I once did a comedy special for ABC called The Search for the New Ideal Man. And I interviewed a comic and she said, you've got to get out there. There just aren't that many great pizza delivery guys. So do it. That's sort of the bottom line is make sure you're out there and you're connecting with people.
Yeah, it's the only guarantee way to fail at networking is not to go out and network.
That's right. To connect, not to go out there and connect.
Meaningful connection. Yeah. And maybe, I guess like we think about it as business. And so we steer away from calling it what it is, but it really is like a professional friendship, right? Yeah. Like we check in on each other. I have a lot of like what I would consider professional friends. Like we don't hang out outside of business. We talk here and, through email and what have you. We exchange stuff on social media, but I consider like us friendly,
Absolutely. I'm sorry, you're more than just a friendly person in my book. I'm invested in you. I care about you.
I might disagree with you. But genuinely, like, I feel like if we just call it what it is, people might start to treat it that way now. Like if we just start calling it like your professional friendships, your network is your professional friendships with people who are in the same industry as you. And you're all supporting each other.
Yes, it has to be mutually beneficial. It has to be mutually beneficial.
Yeah, yeah. No bank accounts are going to be drained over. So what people can do. First of all, that's super helpful. And as someone who has also taught a 101 on networking, you did a much better job than I did in terms of like breaking down all the different elements of things that really do get in your brain and just talk you out of going in the first place. And also I think you do a really great job of just like making sure like if the bow is there on this whole package with the follow-up and the templates that you have, to maintain your network, because like 90% of things that don't happen is because someone didn't follow up. That is just embarrassing. It really is. Someone didn't follow up with an email and they lost an opportunity. I don't know where I got that statistic from. I've heard it many, many times, like within the marketing space, but usually like new business development. But like, a lot of things don't happen because someone didn't follow up. They didn't have the gumption to call that person back that gave them that card or whatever the thing is, So I think that I think your numbers and your systems and your structure make it feel more surmountable, more attainable for those that are not extroverted, those that do not look forward to things like eye contact and conversation. So what I do want to do is go back and talk about what people can do, because you have something coming up in the spring. What is that?
Right. Well, I have two things coming up in the spring.
That's right. See, this is why I take notes, Carol, and they're in front of my face. And I still forgot about number 2.
One is my workshop called Get the Fuck Unstuck.
That title.
And I just did one a couple of weeks ago, and a month ago, and I asked people to follow up with me. And I've gotten so much follow up that people use these tools and they're actually making progress. It really warmed my heart. And if you want to find out more, just go to ckgtfu.com and you can sign up there. And the other thing is I'm going to do a much deeper dive in networking in a workshop called Networking 101.
Okay, great. We'll make sure that we share that with our audience too when that goes live. And what'll be fun is when we release this, you're going to do an AMA on Twitter with our followers.
I would love to, I love to connect with people who, do you hear that? Connect. I love to connect with people who
change my lingo. Yeah, absolutely. So that's cool. So I'm excited to see what people ask you about. Obviously, it's open to everything that you want to discuss. That's a lot to absorb. I highly recommend taking notes during this podcast. We should probably add that to the intro. Get a notepad. Thank you again so much, Carol. We love having you on the show. I obviously could talk to you for hours, and we really appreciate you working with our Big Break finalists and, of course, everything that you do across the industry for underrepresented writers and like all of the, the showrunners training program and Get the Fuck Unstuck. I mean, like you really do. It's very clear that you give a shit about the writer and like the writer's well-being too, not just their career, but like them as a human being. So thank you for sharing all of this awesome advice to just help our audience of aspiring filmmakers get their asses out there.
Yeah. Well, I love doing it.
This episode. I don't know.
I could talk to you, Kayla, for hours, and we actually have over lunch. And I just thank you for having me.
I overshare as always, but like.
Yeah. Do you overshare? No, I'm really interested.
I used to. No. Like what you described earlier, you guys, I absolutely was that person. I am here to tell you that that does not work. I'm in the middle of writing a book about like transitioning from like victim to not victim.
Oh, fabulous.
And I was that person, like meeting people. It was I very much identified, well, I'm the single mom with this thing and that thing and that thing. And that's why you need to work with me, because I overcame all that. And it was like, whoa, what the fuck? Like now I see that. But back then it was like, I thought that was my calling card. Like people were like, wow, she can do all that. Of course she can run this company, and it's like, no, that's too fucking much.
That's right. You don't want people to feel sorry for you. You don't want people to back up 2 steps.
No.
Like, whoa.
No. Early 30s Kayla was a hot mess.
Well, thank you for having me. I love doing this. I'll come anytime and talk to you.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much, Carol.
You're welcome.
Thanks again to Carol Kirstner for coming on the show and to Kayla Guest for hosting. And as always, thanks to you, our listeners. If you liked this episode, leave us a review, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the show on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. For news about new episodes and more, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter @Final Draft Inc., and on Instagram @Final Draft Screenwriting. This podcast was produced by Kayla Guest and co-produced by Emma Vranich. Editing is by Sean Bonnet. Music is by T. Kelly. Thanks again, everyone. Until next time, right on.